Canals, as you may have heard, are artificial waterways. They vary in size, depth and length, and even serve different purposes. Most of them are so big that cargo ships can go through them. They are very important waterways, and you can even see hundreds of ships pass through some of them every day. So, without wasting much time, stick with me as we look into the top 10 biggest canals in the world. Ready? Then let's dive in. Number 10. Corinth Canal. The Corinth Canal connects the Saronic Gulf in the southeast with the Gulf of Corinth in the northwest via the Isthmus of Corinth in Greece. When Periander constructed a ship railway around 600 BCE, tiny boats were transported over the isthmus on cradles with wheels that ran in grooves. It's possible that this arrangement continued into the 9th century. The canal's construction started in 1882, and it was finished and ready for use in 1893. The ports of Posithona at its northwest end and Isthma at its southeast end have greatly benefited economically from the canal. Athens and the Peloponnese are connected by a roadway that passes over the canal. The canal is 3.9 miles long with a 26-foot water depth and varies in breadth from 69 feet at the bottom to 82 feet at the water surface. Number 9. Welland Canal. Welland Canal is a waterway in southern Ontario, Canada that connects the St. Lawrence Seaway and allows large ships to navigate between Lake Erie to the south and Lake Ontario to the north. The Niagara River, which serves as the natural link between Lakes Erie and Ontario, contains insurmountable falls and rapids, prompting the construction of the canal. The contemporary Welland Canal is 27.6 miles long and has a minimum depth of 30 feet. It runs from Port Colborne on Lake Erie to Port Weller on Lake Ontario. 8 locks with a maximum length of 230 feet can accommodate the 327-foot elevation difference between the two lakes. Typically, the canal may be traveled in less than 8 hours. Number 8. Panama Canal. The Panama Canal, also known as Canal de Panama in Spanish, is a Loctite waterway owned and operated by the Republic of Panama that spans the small Isthmus of Panama to connect the Atlantic and Pacific Seas. The Panama Canal is around 40 miles long from shore to shore, and it is about 50 miles from deep water in the Atlantic, namely the Caribbean Sea, to deep water in the Pacific. The Suez Canal and the canal, which was finished in August 1914, are the two most important man-made waterways in the world. The canal cuts the distance traveled by ships traveling between the east and west coasts of the United States, which would otherwise have to round Cape Horn in South America, by around 8,000 nautical miles. On trips between ports on one coast of North America and those on the other side of South America, savings of up to 3,500 nautical miles were also achieved. Number 7. Houston Ship Canal. The Houston Ship Channel is a waterway that runs across Galveston Bay and the former Buffalo Bayou to connect Houston, Texas, with the Gulf of Mexico. The channel is 50.5 miles long, 36 feet deep, and has a minimum width of 300 feet. It was first opened in 1914 and later improved. Number 6. Suez Canal. The Suez Canal is a sea-level waterway that connects the Mediterranean and Red Seas. It runs north-south across the Suez Isthmus in Egypt. The canal provides the shortest maritime route between Europe and the regions surrounding the Indian and Western Pacific Seas, as well as separating the African continent from Asia. It is one of the busiest maritime lanes in the entire world. Between Port Said in the north and Suez in the south, the canal stretches 120 miles, including dug approach channels to the north of Port Said, into the Mediterranean, and to the south of Suez. The isthmus can be crossed in just 75 miles, but the canal does not do so. Instead, it makes use of numerous lakes running from north to south. Although there are long straight stretches across the Suez Canal, there are 8 significant bends. The canal is an open cut without locks. The low-lying Nile River Delta is to the west of the canal, while the Sinai Peninsula, which is higher, more mountainous, and drier, is to the east. The only significant city before the canal's construction, which was finished in 1869, was Suez, which had between 3,000 and 4,000 residents in 1859. Other settlements along its banks have developed since, with Al-Kanara arguably being an exception. Number 5. The White Sea-Baltic Sea Canal. Russian Belomorsko-Baltijski Canal, also known as the White Sea-Baltic Canal, is a network of lakes, rivers, and canals in northwest Russia that connects the White Sea to Lake Onega, where it joins the Volga-Baltic Waterway. There are 141 miles in the White Sea-Baltic Canal, of which 23 miles are man-made. Between 1930 and 1933, it was built primarily using inmate labor. From Povnitz, at the northern tip of Lake Onega, the canal travels north via 7 locks to Lake Vygozero, from where the canalized Vig River flows through 12 further locks to the White Sea. Through the Volga-Baltic Waterway, which Lake Onega connects, ships can access both the Baltic Sea and the Volga River. The system, which can accommodate ships of seagoing size, has strategic as well as economic importance because it reduces the distance by sea between St. Petersburg and Arkhangelsk by 2,500 miles. Timber is the main cargo on the system, much of it going to the nearby paper mills and woodworking businesses. Number 4. Erie Canal. The Great Lakes and New York City are connected by the historic Erie Canal, which runs through Albany and the Hudson River. The 363-mile-long Erie Canal was the first to link Western waterways with the Atlantic Ocean in the United States, taking advantage of the Mohawk River Gap in the Appalachian Mountains. 1817 saw the start of construction, which was finished in 1825. Its success promoted the building of canals across the country and turned New York City into a significant commercial hub. Additionally, many of the engineers who later developed American railroads and other canals used the canal's construction as a training field. Number 3. Karakum Canal. One of the largest water supply canals in the world is Turkmenistan's Karakum Canal, also known as the Turkmen-Garagum Canal. The major portion, which started in 1954 and was finished in 1967, stretches for about 520 miles, bordering the Karakum Desert, from the Amudarya River to Göktepe, west of Ashgabat. The canal's length was extended by 870 miles throughout the 1970s and 1980s when it was extended to the Caspian Sea coast. The 280-mile-long navigable canal's water supply is mostly used for irrigation, while canal fishing has also gained popularity. Number 2. The Grand Canal. Grand Canal is a network of waterways in eastern and northern China that connects Hangzhou in the Zhejiang province with Beijing. It is also known as the Beijing-Hangzhou Canal. It is the longest built waterway in the world, measuring almost 1,100 miles. But not all of it is a canal. It was constructed to make it possible for succeeding Chinese rulers to transport more grain from the abundantly fertile Chang and Huai River basins to feed the northern Chinese capital cities and sizable standing armies. It has been designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This historic waterway was initially created in the 4th century BCE, restored in the 6th century CE, and has been in use ever since. Number 1. Kiel Canal. A major canal in northern Germany, the Kiel Canal connects the North Sea with the Baltic Sea across a distance of 61 miles. The canal serves as the quickest, safest, and most affordable shipping route between the two seas. It stretches from Holtenau at Kiel Harbor on the Baltic Sea to Brunst-Petelkug at the Elbe River's mouth on the North Sea. The canal, which has undergone 2 expansions, is currently 160 meters wide and 11 meters deep. It is crossed by 7 high-level bridges with a clearance of roughly 43 meters for ships. The locks are 327 meters long by 45 meters wide. The canal, built between 1887 and 1895, initially served German military needs by eliminating the necessity for ships to travel northward around Denmark Peninsula. Between 1907 and 1914, it was expanded to make room for big naval ships. The canal, which was then known as the Kaiser Wilhelm Canal, belonged to Germany before World War I. On June 28, 1919, the Treaty of Versailles established rules that effectively internationalized the canal while keeping German control over it. Only general police, shipping, sanitary, and customs rules were applied to traffic on the canal. Adolf Hitler disapproved of these clauses in 1936. The Treaty of Versailles' provisions protecting freedom of passage has once more been followed since World War II, and the canal is still a crucial passageway for Baltic commerce. Alright guys, this wraps up today's video. Please consider giving a thumbs up and hitting the subscribe button as well.